Welcome to the Biz and Tech Podcast. My name is Blake Dowling. I am the CEO of Aegis Business Technologies, headquartered in Tallahassee, Florida, and we are moving this summer. Moving is lots of fun. If you have any tips or ideas for me, please let me know. But before we get started today, cybersecurity. Roku was hacked recently. If you're a client of Roku's, if you use their service, go ahead and change your password. What's going to happen eventually with all of these breaches is that all of our passwords are going to be for sale on the dark web. That method of hacking is called credential stuffing. So to avoid being a victim, change your passwords. Don't use the same passwords at multiple sites. Follow these and other helpful suggestions, and you can stop the next breach. It's rough out there. Make sure you're using two-factor authentication and everything else at your disposal. Talk to your IT team for more questions. Talk to me, etc. Have a great day. Thank you very much. Today we're welcoming William Smith from Capital City Bank to the show. William and I go way back. Before we get started, I'll never forget, we were talking about banking. I just moved to Tallahassee from Atlanta, and I said, William, I'm a long-term First Union customer. I've been their client since high school, and it sounds like a pain to move. And you said, well, you want to go to a basketball game and talk about it? Has First Union ever taken you to a basketball game? I said, no, William, they have not. And me, you, and Skip Smith, rest in peace to a banking legend there, we continued the conversation, and we have been loyal clients ever since, and much more than that. We'll talk about our journey with your bank a little more in today's discussion, but thank you for being an amazing partner over the years to Aegis. We couldn't have gotten to where we are today in our 20-year journey without you guys, so thanks.
We're just appreciative of getting to be a part of it, getting to be a part of your journey and watching y'all grow, and hey, I appreciate you having me here today. I'm probably not going to live up to some of your past folks. I know my stories aren't as good as Gary Jordan's, but I know that my mom and my wife will listen to the podcast, so I got 2 followers for you.
Awesome, man. And we are now showing listeners in Japan. I looked on Spotify the other day, so dome arigato, etc. to our friends in the Far East. How about that? Bilingual today. Excellent. All right, man, let's dive in. So let's start with, how did you become a banker? Where'd you go to school? What was that journey like? What'd you major in? Let's hit you with the multitude of questions.
All right. So I grew up here in Tallahassee, born and raised here in Tallahassee. Went to school at McClay. Actually, we had a legacy breakfast this morning at McClay, which is really one of my favorite events at McClay. It's if you went to school at McClay and have a kid at McClay. And we just had to move it from the dining hall to the gym because we ran out of space in the dining hall. So I went to McClay, and after McClay, I wanted to get out of Tallahassee, and I went to Auburn.
Did you know I was one of the Rhodes Scholars at McClay?
I knew you went to McClay, yes.
Bill Jablon told me, if you keep up this pace, son, this is my senior year of high school, you're going to be our Rhodes Scholar. I said, what does that mean? He goes, I'm going to tell you to hit the road. Bill is the man.
Oh, he's awesome. Yeah, so I went to Auburn, majored in agriculture economics at Auburn, and when I was at Auburn, every summer my mom always told me, you need to have a job when you go home from school, or you can stay and take summer school. Well, I dang sure didn't want to take summer school, so I tried to find a job, and I think it was my freshman year. I was trying to get a job in Auburn, working on a plantation in Auburn, and this guy kept giving me the runaround, and he told me to call him back in a couple of weeks. So I called him back in a couple of weeks, and it got to be time where I was supposed to have a job. And my dad called, and he says, why don't you just come home and work at the bank? So I said, okay. I probably wasn't as excited as maybe I should have been, but I ended up falling in love with it, and it was a ton of fun. I worked in the credit department, underwriting loans and looking at whether people qualified to borrow money from us, and I loved it. So every summer thereafter, I worked in some sort of financial institution. I went over to Mariana and worked at Farm Credit for a summer, and then did a couple more stints at Capital City Bank, and I just loved it. And after college, I came back and worked at the bank.
Awesome.
and I've been there for 17 years.
Yeah, those first jobs while studying are so huge. I remember I wanted to be a lawyer, and after my freshman year, I took a job at Greenberg Traurig to be their runner. And Mr. LaFace was running the show at the time. Rest in peace, Ron Sr. And I told him, he's like, I don't have a lot of work for you. I was like, well, that's good because I don't have a lot of work to give. I was thinking noon to 5 would be a good, base for my hours. And I don't want to work on Fridays either. And he accommodated. And you know what? It was one of those jobs, kind of the opposite of your experience. I was like, maybe I don't want to be a lawyer. Maybe I want to do something else. But Mr. Baggett did let me drive his green Jaguar around. That was a lot of fun. That was a heck of a ride.
No, I mean, I had similar experiences. The old tunnel that ran under Pensacola Street, where the football players used to go under.
Mm-hmm.
One summer I worked at Mitchell Brothers.
Okay.
And we tore down the tunnel. And I right then and there, I knew that getting my education and not working outside was something I wanted to do.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
My dad put me to work. Our family business was trucking and warehousing when I was a kid, and he put me to work in the warehouse, probably a little younger than was legally allowed in the state of Texas. But I was about 11 working in the back of the warehouse. And the warehouse gets hot in Texas in the summer. And that summer they had an account of antifreeze and an account of kitty litter. And so the gentleman that drove the forklifts would, occasionally hit a pallet, and those two ingredients, when mixed together, would probably make one of the most inhumane substances on the face of the earth. Kitty litter, antifreeze, gel. It must have been like a napalm kind of like substance. Anyway, I think I still have some of it in my lungs, but that's fine. Thanks, Dad.
Yeah.
Appreciate the life lesson there. Let's talk about the bank a little bit. So you guys celebrated, correct me if I'm wrong, 125-year anniversary recently. Is that correct?
Actually, we just celebrated 129th.
So I missed a few years.
You missed a few, but that's okay.
The
You're
pandemic
close.
was a confusing time.
Yeah.
We'd all lost a
Yeah.
few years. So walk us through the early days of the bank. It was a Mr. Saxon in the first days, and your grandfather, correct?
Yeah.
Walk me through that time.
So we actually just got done writing a book, and I brought my book in case you made me look something up that I didn't know the answer to. But
Awesome.
we, for our 125th anniversary, we had a local author from Tallahassee, Julie Strauss Bettinger. And Julie did a really, really great job and wrote the history of the bank.
What's it called?
It's called Unwavering.
Awesome. I love the name.
It is it's short stories of
Okay.
the history of the bank and kind of just walks through different moments in time of the bank, and it's pretty neat. I loved it, but I loved the legacy and the history of the bank. But the bank was started in 1895 by a guy named George Saxon.
Okay.
And Mr. Saxon was what I would call today an entrepreneur. He had a dry goods store in Apalachicola, and he said that he closed it because he said there was not enough capitalists in Appalach, so he was going back home. And he came back to Tallahassee and started a dry goods store here in downtown Tallahassee, and he would travel the country finding goods and bringing them back and selling them in his store. And then he started extending credit to farmers to help them get through the growing season.
Okay.
And he would take a piece of that crop back from the farmer in return for payment, and he would mark it up and sell it to the northerners. And then he became a real estate agent, and you kind of see where this is going. Became a real estate agent, and he was making loans to folks to help them, I guess, buy land, small loans. And he eventually started a bank in 1895. And we've been here ever since. Now we have 60 offices in Florida, Georgia, and 2 small offices in Alabama.
Wow.
If you think about the bank, it's what we're proud of is that we have the same name on the door, and it's the same name since 1895 at Capital City Bank.
That's huge in y'all's industry.
Yeah.
With all the change. I mean, I mentioned First Union earlier, became Wachovia, became Wells Fargo. They're obviously not a community bank, and I know y'all are big, but I certainly consider you all a community partner in everything you do because you see your name everywhere, whether it's the Chamber Conference here in Tallahassee or other events, which we'll talk about charitable work here in a minute. Let me ask you this. Before that first job in banking, did you have a gig as a kid? What was your first job? Did you have a lemonade stand, mow yards?
Let's see, as a kid, one of my early things I remember doing was I was a transporter at Tallahassee Memorial Hospital.
Okay.
I don't even think they do it anymore, but they had volunteers, and you would wheel people from their room to their car to pick up in the car. They couldn't walk. And I remember doing that early on. I always thought that my dad and Lane Green, the late Lane Green, who used to run Tall Timbers, had a side gig together because I wanted to work on a plantation. I thought I loved hunting, and I thought I wanted to do something outside on a plantation. And Lane gave me a job at Tall Timbers one summer, but he put me trapping rats. And so twice a day.
That's called a glamour gig.
Yeah, I was a low man on the totem pole, so I was trapping rats, and I was convinced. I used to give Lane a hard time about it, that him and my dad had some conspiracy together to make sure that this wasn't what I did. And trapping rats isn't fun. I don't know if you've ever tried to sex a rat, but it's harder than you would think.
That's good to know. That's good to know. So you introduced me to Randy, one of you all's VPs recently, which for anyone listening or watching today, William introduced me to this gentleman and said, yeah, Blake will make a good motivational speaker for your retail team. And I said, wait, what'd you say? Because when I give a chat, if I have the honor of speaking to a group, it's usually about cybersecurity. Occasionally, when I put out my own book project a couple of years ago, talk about that a little bit. And motivational speaking was interesting. But I tell you what, man, y'all's retail team is awesome. I got to meet Cinnamon and a bunch of cool people, a bunch of awesome bankers. And they were gracious enough to let me tell a few stories for them today. But
they loved it. They loved it. And Cinnamon's one of my favorites. They loved it.
I got to sign autographs too. Yeah. So that was fun. I don't get to do that every day. Although my office hazed me a little bit.
Just want to know what they did with those autograph books once you left.
Well, I saw one at Goodwill for sale for $1. We're going to have Mr. Shelfer on as a guest later this summer. We appreciate all the good work they're doing out there. But you can buy it on Amazon, Professionally Distanced by Blake Dowling, for $5. It's huge in Belgium, ladies and gentlemen. But point of my story or long question would be this. What's your favorite part of working in banking? What's your favorite? I was thinking of Randy, and what gets you up in the morning? Say, you know what? I want to go get Blake Dowling alone. Thank you, Rob Lane, by the way, Capital City banker. What gets you out of bed in the morning?
When you send me the questions, and what typically gets me out of bed is my to-do list.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I think for me, it's the legacy that my family's created. I mean, I'm a fourth generation banker at Capital City, and that's pretty cool to me.
That's huge.
And it's something I want to be able to maintain the same name on the door. The fun part about being a banker is getting to help people like you, get to achieve your dreams. We talked a little bit about it at lunch yesterday, from where we started with you to where you are now. I mean, you just bought a new building. That's pretty darn cool. Mm-hmm. I mean, you got a home, you got an office building, and just helping people achieve their dreams and move to the next steps of whatever the next step of their life is. I think professionally, just getting to work for a company that has the culture that Capital City has. I mean, what Mr. Saxon created is pretty incredible. He was a strong proponent for his community. Everything he was doing, I'm sure, benefited him, but it also benefited the community. And I think Capital City is a lot like that today, that we still really work hard to uplift the communities we're in through sponsoring nonprofit events, to Treehouse that you used to help out with, to the Alzheimer's Project, or whatever nonprofit event is going on at the time. We have a foundation that we give money through to nonprofits every year. We give away about $300,000 a year through our foundation.
Awesome. Across
not just Tallahassee, but all of our markets. And I think so. Give them to continue the culture that we've created. I mean, I've been there for let's see, 17 years, and I'm 170th out of 800 on the seniority list. That's pretty cool.
That's huge.
I mean, we got, I think, let's see, almost 40% of our company's been there for 10 years. I mean, I don't know. That means something to me to be able to work for a company that has that kind of culture.
It sure does, man.
Yeah.
We started around the same time when I started at Aegis as an account executive in 2006. And, 20 years later, we did just buy our new headquarters. And the first call after talking to Carlton Dean, my old pal who was the agent for our new headquarters, second call was to you guys. I told you about we needed to find a place, and we found one in Midtown. It wasn't easy, but you and Rob Lane, man, appreciate you. And funny story, I don't know if you remember this, but after the Wachovia in the basketball conversation, I said, William, I'm going to bug you about everything. I was like, if you want my business, I'm going to send you a text when I need new checks. Little would I know that checks would become not as prominent as they are just a few years later. But I used to text William when I needed new checks. And shout out to Natalie from Capital City Bank, because she always made sure that they found their way to me. But I appreciate that. I mean, having a one-on-one relationship with a banker is pretty special, and y'all's culture is awesome. I can think of, a lot of folks like Brooke and Ashley and Don May. I mean, you guys have a rock band in your repertoire.
Yeah, I mean, how many people have a drummer hanging around with them all the time?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to throw a party, be the band.
Yeah.
You can't beat that.
Yeah.
Let's talk sports. So
All
we
right.
live in a sports-centric state, California, Texas, and Florida, whether it's elections, sports, college football especially. It's the top three. So first question about sports, your favorite sporting event, and then we'll talk a little more detail about sports culture.
It's probably baseball. I grew up playing baseball. I grew up as a kid going to FSU baseball games with my parents, and baseball.
Nice. Any particular game stand out? Omaha, other?
So I've been fortunate that I got to hang around FSU baseball a lot as a kid, and my Coach Martin was my dad's middle school PE teacher at Cobb Middle School, and so I got to do a number of things with them. And I could tell stories for days, but one of my favorite stories is trips. In '94, I went to Omaha with my dad, and
Okay.
I think, well, I'm not going to say how old I was, but I was young. And we were on the plane from Atlanta to Omaha, and this guy walked by with a briefcase. And I looked at his briefcase, and it said Easton on it. And I said, Dad, there's Mr. Easton, the guy that owned Easton Bats. It was a big bat company at the time.
Right.
And my dad says, well, why don't you go back and talk to him? So I walked back there, and I said, Mr. Easton, my name's William Smith. Are you going to Omaha? And he said, yeah, I am. And, pretty close off the bat, he said, well, what kind of bat do you swing? And I said, well, at the time, FSU swung Louisville bats.
Okay.
So I swung a Louisville. I swung a TPX. I said, well, Mr. Easton, I swing a Louisville Slugger. And he says, about time for you to go back to your seat, son. So I walked my happy ass back to my seat and sat down. And it's always, that story's always stuck to me. And one of the things I think about is how we at the bank, it's an extreme case of it, but try to use the people that use us.
Right.
And obviously Mr. Easton didn't want to talk to somebody that didn't use his product. But
you were dismissed. So.
Yeah, here I was, this young kid going to talk to Mr. Easton. I mean, I was pretty proud of myself for walking back and talking to him. But we got to do a number of trips with the baseball team. Went to Minneapolis and watched them play. It was in the Hormel Foods Classics.
Okay.
Give a shout out to Chip Baker, who was the third base coach, and I call him Uncle Chip to this day because Uncle Chip used to babysit me when I was a kid, and I'd go stay with him when my parents went out of town, and we'd just go to baseball. And I was in hog heaven. But they had a life-size mural of Kirby Puckett in the outfield. I don't remember if you remember Kirby Puckett in the old Metrodome. It was this is the first time I'd ever been to an indoor baseball game.
Well, Coach Martin's legacy is as legendary as it gets. Mike Martin Jr. and I went to Maclay together. We were running around at the same time. Chuck Howell and some of the other guys from the teams in the mid 90s are friends of mine. And, special moments there. And you certainly had a very special view behind the scenes, if you will.
Yeah, I'll just tell you what a special guy he was. When FSU played in the Rose Bowl against my alma mater, Auburn, we had just had our kid, and I was talking to my wife, Sophie, and I said, well, man, it'd be fun to go to the Rose Bowl. And she said, my wife is very accommodating and puts up with a lot for me. And she said, well, you should go. I said, really? We just had a kid. And she said, no, you should go. So I went by myself. And when I'm walking into the Rose Bowl, I run into Coach Martin and Meat and Miss Martin, who we always call Meemaw. And Coach Martin was getting bombarded by everybody. Everybody recognized him. And so Meat said, you stay with Dad and I'll stay with Meemaw. And I said, okay, not a problem. So I stayed with Coach Martin. I'm walking into the game with him, and everybody recognizes him and they stop him. And he has a full conversation with every person and gives them his autograph or a picture. I mean, it was drunks, it was every possible type, and it just kind of showed you who he was. And one time I looked at Coach Martin, I said, Coach Martin, if you don't hurry up, we're going to miss the start of the football game. And it just showed you what kind of person he was, because he was willing to take so much time for each person. I mean, here he was in California getting just bombarded.
Yeah. I signed 3 autographs the other day. It wore me out. I don't know how folks like that do it.
Yeah.
What a gentleman. Good stuff. So let's cover some other territory today. Let's talk about your family. I know your folks. Your mom and dad are first class. You have, 2 kids now?
I got 2 boys, yep.
And how old are they?
I have a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old.
That's a lot of energy, man.
They're polar opposites.
And Sophie, your bride, how long y'all been married?
We got married in 2011, so 13 years.
Congratulations. That's great.
About put me on the spot. I about missed it.
Producer, edit requested. Just kidding. No, you did great. That was good. So Silicon Valley Bank, some other banks had some problems. From my perspective as the CEO of a small business, it's like any industry. You run a business poorly, it's going to fail. It looked like Silicon Valley Bank was vested in the wrong areas. Tech, hence the name. What are your thoughts on those bank failures from last year and the years prior? Anything from your expertise you can share with us?
I was hoping we'd talk about my kids some more. No, on Silicon Valley, I think diversification. They didn't have a lot of diversification. They were concentrated in one industry, that being the venture capital industry. They had one large client that had a lot of control over other depositors, and when he yelled, when he said jump, everybody else said, how far should we jump? And he said, pull your money out. And so they had to run on deposits, and it just,
that kind of thing wouldn't have happened 30 years ago.
Yeah.
You look at social media and the impact on every industry. But you yell fire, everybody's going to hear it.
It's probably a different kind of run on a bank than someone like Mr. Saxon was thinking would ever happen. People used to come to the bank and get their money. Now they were wiring money out, and they were doing everything through what you guys have created at Aegis. technology. And they, had a huge run. And, we at Capital City, we think we have a pretty good diversification. Their average account size was huge. At Silicon Valley, ours is like $28,000. So it's, diversification is huge.
Absolutely. What's changed in banking, in your opinion, from, say, when you started 17, 18 years ago to today? And what stayed the same?
So I think, just from the business of banking has changed drastically in the fact that clients don't really come to the office anymore. I think almost 50% of our transactions are done digitally or over some other medium. So offices just aren't what they used to be. What hasn't changed, Blake can still text somebody when he needs checks, and it's the relationship that hasn't changed, or what we think hasn't changed.
It's not anyone, it's you.
Yeah, so we, the people haven't changed at the bank, and we still really value a relationship with our client. We just have to adapt to how the client wants to do business with us.
cybersecurity is obviously a big part of our business. Hacking has become a reality that I always tell folks when we look at our marketing collateral. Cybersecurity used to be the 5th or 6th bullet point. Now it's the 2nd. IT support, cybersecurity. And, I'll give your team a big shout out. I was sitting by the phone a decade ago and saw Capital City Bank on caller ID, and it was a teller over by Thomasville Road. And she said, hey, do y'all have a checkout for $2,200 to Alan Smith? I'm making up that name. And I was like, nope. Like, well, he's here. I'm going to go ahead and call the police. And I said, yes, please. And they apprehended that suspect right then, right there. And to have a community banker that, think of the volume, especially back then, a decade ago, coming through to pick up the phone, call a client and say, is this valid? Huge, man, because cybersecurity hits on so many different levels. I was talking about passwords earlier. What are your thoughts on cybersecurity at the bank?
We have a pretty good system that checks for all that stuff. The teller obviously saw something wrong with the check, so it wasn't a system, it was a person that probably caught Alan writing a bad check. But it's rampant. Fraud is rampant. Something that we deal with almost every daily probably. And I would, one of the things I would say that's changed about banking is people write less checks.
Right.
And if you still write a lot of checks, I'd kind of give a plug that you need to talk to your banker about positive pay. And just because fraud is so rampant and people are whitewashing checks, they're changing who the payee is. They're just doing a number of different things to get your money. And you just got to be so careful today.
Well, you guys were on the cutting edge at your bank and in your industry. When I talk to a lobbying entity about two-factor authentication, I don't understand what that is. That sounds like a pain. And that was a good accent, by the way.
It was.
Pat me on the back. But no, seriously, I'll be like, when you log into your Capital City Bank account and it sends you a code and you have to enter that code, two-factor authentication. The world's still playing catch up, and you guys were there on the front lines, as you had to be as a financial institution. But kudos to you for helping fight hackers. It's a never-ending thing.
Yeah, I wish some of them would just get a job and do something else. They're really good at it.
It's crazy. There are actual job boards on the dark web posting jobs for hackers.
Yeah,
that's where we're at these days. All right, let's veer before we run out of time today. Let's talk time travel, because why not? If you could go anywhere, time travel, where would you go?
I struggle with this one a little bit, but I'd probably say that I'm going to go back and be a cowboy.
Okay.
I'm going to go wrangle cows out west.
So you don't want to be like the sheriff? You want to be the cowboy on the ranch?
Yeah. I listened to Gary's interview, and he wanted to go back and redate his wife. I'm not sure if I redated my wife that she'd still be as interested in me. I hope she would be. No, I'm sure she would. But I'd probably go back and be a cowboy.
Nice. That's awesome. So fave book of all time besides the Capital City Bank book, because that would be that'd be too easy for you.
Favorite books, I like reading some of the Navy SEAL books.
Awesome.
There's a guy by the name of Mike Day who was a Navy SEAL, and he had a book called Perfectly Wounded.
Okay.
He got shot 27 times, and he walked to the medevac.
Jeez.
After he cleared the room, he was the first guy to enter a room, and the Al-Qaeda ambushed him. And I have a real, strong, those guys are amazing. What they do for our country, and I love reading about it. I read their book about Hell Week and what they go through to become a Navy SEAL. So I like some of those. I read a book.
What did they call the sugar cookie? The exercise where you got to do your push-ups and then jump in the water and then roll in the sand and then do your calisthenics.
It's unbelievable what they go through. They lock them in a box and they got to figure out how to get out. It's incredible.
Did you read? There's a short book. I believe it's called "Make Your Bed in the Morning," something like that.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Have you read that?
I've seen it. Yeah.
Powerful stuff.
Mike Day had done such so much training that he got shot. I'm probably going to get this wrong, but he got shot in his gun, in his pistol, and it came apart. But he had done so much training, he knew how to put it back together and then get his way out. I mean, it's unbelievable.
All right, let's get ready to wrap up. Last question. What advice would you give 18-year-old you if you were sitting down with him today?
Let's see. I would probably say have fun. I think I have fun. My wife says I'm not as fun as I could be. Enjoy. I would probably go to church more and get into my faith earlier in life. Patience. I'm not patient. And advice that my grandpa always says, my dad told me about is don't burn the bridge down, as in don't ruin a relationship with somebody. But if you do, make sure you get the whole damn bridge, because you don't want any little pieces to come back up and bite you.
Heck yeah.
And I don't know, it means a lot. Think about that, and it's true. It's really true.
Absolutely is, man.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, my sincere thanks to your team. I think I covered my shout-outs, but Ashley Leggett was our banker for a little bit after Skip Smith. We appreciate her. Rob Lane was invaluable to us this year. Went through Leadership Tallahassee with Brooke, your dad, Randy, Beth, Don. Y'all got a heck of a team. It's a pleasure to do business with y'all. Y'all make a big impact here in the community, so shout out to you guys. And thanks for listening today. It's
Do we need to take my mom and my wife, or since they're probably the only two that listen to me? They'll listen to the other ones.
Let's thank them again, and your kids. We can make them watch, get some clicks, get some extra listens.
We will.
We'll take over middle schools. But thanks for listening to today. We started this podcast with the intent of sharing stories from our region and our community, and nothing encapsulates that better than today's conversation with William Smith. Thanks for being a great banker. Thanks for being a great friend. Thank you to Josh and Gabby for a solid episode. Tallahassee, that is it for today. Thanks for listening to the Biz and Tech Podcast. I am Blake Dowling, signing off. We'll see you next time with our guest Susan Stafford and then Fred Shelfer, and we'll see what the fall has in store for us. Have a great day. See you next time.